Good evening, I'm Patty Satalia.
And I'm David Price. Coming up on Pennsylvania Inside Out, a little help when it comes to helping yourself with over-the-counter medicines and Ed's Elephants.
We'll talk with a Penn State professor emeritus who is now a high-ranking member of Taiwan's National Security Council about this country's role in supporting democracy in Taiwan.
We begin with a super-fast internet connection. Turns out that the fastest way to send information on land may already be in place. We're just not using it, and there's quite a bit to be done before we can. We asked Mohsen Kavehrad about the possibilities of high-voltage electrical wires and why he calls them a national treasure.
Okay, let me qualify the national treasure. The power lines hang over power poles, and the poles are omnipresent everywhere, including in rural America, where they have light, but nobody delivers broadband internet service to those areas simply because there is not enough revenue. So the DSL service providers or the cable companies are not willing to go there. There is cost associated with running service to those areas. Whereas the power lines and power poles are everywhere. And with a graduate student, we started doing some study. We were encouraged by AT&T to do an independent assessment of what is the potential in use of power lines for internet service delivery. And we came up with a model that is telling us the lines have a high capacity.
Now, when you say a high capacity, we're so used to, we've moved out of 56K modems into, I guess, cable and DSL are now the big thing. So compared to that, how fast?
The theoretical bound that we see over a kilometer of the unshielded medium voltage wire line is about a gigabit per second.
That's fast.
That is very fast, but that is theory. How to get there, how much does it cost, that's a different story. Plus, these lines are unshielded, so they can be potential source of interference. They're very good antennas. And we already have existing services in the HF band, so there is potential for interference. We have some solutions to control the interference, and also NTIA, which is a very reputable organization, by the request of White House last year, they did extensive studies and telling the power companies, if you like to get into this business, how you should conduct your business. And also FCC has announced the limit on how much you can transmit in terms of power, so you do not disrupt the existing services.
No, I have to imagine that it's difficult. Walking near a high-tension wire, it's going bzzz. That can't be good for data transmission. How do you filter that? How do you clean that up?
Well, the power is being transferred at a very low frequency of 60 hertz. But the broadband signal is going to go over the upper range of the frequency band, which we call it the high frequency HF band. So there is no connection or relation between the high power that gets transferred over these lines for power delivery and providing lighting, and the internet service, which is provided over a much higher frequency band.
Now, this is obviously something in the early stages, but you did say that there is some consideration, before we went on the air, that there's some consideration being given by companies now to an electrical hookup.
Actually, there are a dozen companies in trials for offering this service. And the power company in Cincinnati publicly announced that they will be delivering internet over the power line soon.
Now, it's not so simple, I would imagine, as taking your computer and sticking it into the wall and plugging it in. And there has to be a concern, well, there's a concern on my part, that there's electricity coming into this thing, and I've been told all my life that electricity touching it is bad. How do you overcome these?
No, it's not done as simple as you put it. But there are power line modem companies and telecom companies who serve as a consultant to power companies, and collectively they managed to do this without causing any danger for us. Now, earlier I mentioned this omnipresent national treasure.
Yeah.
The lines themselves may create some potential interference that has to be dealt with, but the poles themselves are harmless. And once the power companies are in the business of delivering telecom service, internet, for all concerned, they could hang fibers over the poles because they own the real estate and they own the pole. So therefore, if we encourage them somehow to get into rural America, then the usage of the wire line itself is not that critical. Eventually, they could use other means. They could use cables with shielding, but use the same poles, and that is the most challenging part of taking the broadband everywhere. Because alternative is digging trenches, which is very costly, for example, to lay fiber or new cable on the ground. And wireless is a possibility. Again, you need to place the antenna somewhere, and I would not like to have an antenna in my backyard.
No.
So there is this real estate issue. Whereas the power companies own the poles and they're omnipresent. So I call the poles a national treasure.
And how long do you think, and this is speculation, I understand this is speculation, how long do you think it might be or could be before the power grid could be used nationwide for broadband?
Well, in early 20th centuries, the power companies were private and they were not willing to go into rural areas. So the U.S. government put up some money, subsidized this, and made it happen. So the light went into every home and came the prosperity. Now we know there is a digital gap between the East Coast and West Coast, which are well developed, and DSL service and cable service is available everywhere. But in the middle, we have many areas that at the moment do not have access to broadband. So if indeed the power companies are encouraged to somehow get the broadband to rural America, I think prosperity will come. Once upon a time, to develop an area, you had to build highways. But now I think first you build an information highway, then everything else will follow.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
It is amazing to me what we find out that is already there, but it is quite a ways down the road until we can actually maybe utilize these things.
Stuff.